Hello friends, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Vicki and you're with Grammy in the Kitchen. Today we're going to make a meatloaf, mashed potatoes, homemade gravy. I took some corn on the cob out of the freezer, homemade biscuits. These are biscuits that I got from Becky from Acre Homestead. This is her recipe. If you find any value into this video, please hit that like button. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe. Be part of the Grammy family. We need to bring the art of home cooking, scratch-made home cooking, back into our house. We need to learn the basics on how to make real meals using real ingredients and stop buying processed, boxed, ready-to-eat food. So without further ado, aprons on, let's get started. Today is actually Christmas Eve, and we're going to make the bread. We're going to need to make our stuffing tomorrow, or dressing. I don't stuff the turkey or chicken. I just make it as a side dish, so we're going to be making that today. So I went ahead and started the dough, but it's my basic recipe that I added 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, 1 tablespoon of rosemary, and then a half of a tablespoon of dried sage. So I got that all mixed up. Now we just have to knead it all together. So I have a 1 pound loaf pan and a 2 pound loaf pan right here that we're going to be using. So in this mixing bowl I had 2 cups of warm water, a half a cup of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, a 1/4 cup of oil, and I ended up putting 6 cups of flour. You're going to need between 5 and 6 cups of flour. So I just mixed that in the stand mixer. Now we need to go ahead and knead our dough. And I do enjoy kneading my dough by hand. I'm just going to dump this out with all the little bits and pieces that are in here using a bowl scraper. Smells so good with the rosemary and the Italian seasoning and the sage. Oh my goodness, it's so good. So I put a little bit of flour on my bench here, and I'm just going to try to knead it until it comes together and not be so shaggy. And we're going to turn this into dressing tomorrow. Maybe not all of it, because we're having a small Christmas, just the husband and myself. We spent Christmas last weekend with the kids in North Carolina, and tonight we're supposed to go to my daughter's house and have Christmas Eve with her and her family. So I'm just turning it inside out just to get it all cohesive. And then I need to make dinner tonight for the husband and I. We're going to have meatloaf tonight, mashed potatoes, and some corn on the cob that I had in the freezer. Now I just need to knead it for 8 minutes. And since I had the mixing bowl dirty, I went ahead and made some pizza dough, because I don't have no frozen pizzas in the freezer, so I needed to make some pizza dough today also. Don't skimp on this step about kneading it for 8 minutes. That will make your bread turn out light and fluffy. I like herbs in my bread. It makes good sandwich bread. It's going to make a delicious stuffing. Alright, it's coming together. I don't see no dry bits in there. I did a question survey last week, and I asked what y'all wanted for Christmas, kitchen item wise, and a couple people did say they wanted a grain mill. I do have a grain mill and I do have some grains, but the way the husband works and his sleeping, I would have to grind my wheat while he's at work, and I don't usually think about it until I'm ready to make bread. But I do want to get more into whole grain breads and pizzas and biscuits and all the things, but I don't think about it until I'm ready to make it, and I can't use the grain mill because he's usually asleep. Alright, now it is coming together. It is looking like a beautiful cohesive dough ball. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see all the herbs in there. Oh, and it smells delicious. So I have the mixing bowl right here. Put a good amount of olive oil in there. Now we're going to turn our dough. Make sure it's completely covered in oil. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. And since I'm going to be using the oven, I'm just going to stick my dough ball in the microwave and let it do its first rise. And now we're going to go ahead and get started in making our meatloaf. In this cup, I have 1/3 of a cup of our homemade breadcrumbs, you know, the ones we keep in the freezer. And I just made a batch of cashew milk, so I put about 1/2 cup of cashew milk in here, just trying to hydrate those so they're not hard little crumbs in our meatloaf. Just trying to hydrate those breadcrumbs a little bit. So in this bowl I have 2 pounds of ground turkey, and you can use any kind of ground meat you like. I have 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of onion powder. I'll mix that together. I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of pepper and about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I do like Worcestershire sauce in mine. It just adds a depth of flavor. So we're going to put about a tablespoon in there. Have 1 egg. I do have the oven set for 350. I'm actually going to be cooking in a cast iron pan, so I'm going to put this in the oven to warm up. And by the time we get our meatloaf mixture together, that pan will be nice and hot. And we can go ahead and put this in the oven. Alright, now we're going to add our breadcrumb milk mixture. And that is it. Okay, our pan is hot. Just going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil in there. Probably not necessary, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Alright, let's see if we can form this into a loaf before we put it in the pan. We're going to put this in the oven and we're going to bake it for about an hour. Timer is set. We're going to go ahead and get the potatoes peeled, rinsed, and cooked for the mashed potatoes. Now, you know we save all of our vegetable scraps to have a no-cost stock, chicken stock or vegetable stock or anything like that, but you do not need to save your potato skins because they're too starchy and it will just gum up your stock. So potato skins, if you have chickens or a composting bin, you can either feed them to your chickens or put it in your compost bin, but don't save it for stock. I might have about 2 pounds of potatoes right here that we're using. Now we're not going to do a massive prep day today for Christmas tomorrow, only the bread, because that will take the longest. Everything else we're just going to cook tomorrow, and the menu is going to be sweet potato casserole, stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, macaroni and cheese, and then a roasted chicken. Pretty much the same thing we did for Thanksgiving. And of course, a chocolate pie. And I am going to tweak that recipe like I showed you on the Thanksgiving prep day. We are going to use just semi-sweet chocolate and not bittersweet chocolate. But everything else is going to be the same. The crust is going to be a graham cracker crust. We're going to make the homemade chocolate pudding to go in there, but just use semi-sweet instead of bittersweet. But don't worry, I'll bring you along. You will not see it on Christmas Day. You'll probably see it about a week after. But don't worry, you'll be coming along with this. And the recipe that I cook for Thanksgiving and Christmas is not necessarily just a holiday meal. You can actually have it anytime. So even if you see the video after Christmas, just know you can have it anytime, or all of it, or a portion of it. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and cube these. And this is a refrigerated vinegar garlic that we preserved together. I am going to put 3 very large cloves in there. And I am going to season it with just a little bit of salt. I'm going to put the lid on it, put it on the stove, and let it come up to a boil, and then we're going to make mashed potatoes. Okay, so the meatloaf is in the oven, and the potatoes are on the stove, heating up to boil so we can make the mashed potatoes. But I also want to make some of Becky's from Acre Homestead's biscuits. I tried them before, they are delicious. But this is the first time I'm actually going to be using almond milk. I've always made it with the powdered milk that I hydrated back, but I'm going to make it with almond milk. I have no idea if this is going to work. We will find out together. So in this bowl I have 2 cups of flour, and I have a half of a, you can see it's the whole stick, but I'm not using this part. I'm only going to use this part. This is 4 ounces of broken butter. I just cubed it. And in here I have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Just going to whisk that together. Make sure it's evenly distributed through the flour. If you have a pastry knife, This would actually work better, but I do not. We're going to put the cute butter in there. And in our cashew milk, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of vinegar. I don't know how that's going to work in cashew milk, but we will find out together. We're just going to let that sit for a minute. We'll go ahead and break this butter up in the flour. I'm just using my hand, squeezing the flour into the butter. Get smaller pea-size pieces. So let me ask you a question. Has anyone heard of the 3 Rivers Homestead Challenge? Every January, Jessica from 3 Rivers Homestead does this no spending food, like meal prepping. So she just uses it's the pantry challenge, where she uses things in her pantry for the whole month of January, and I think she goes into February. But she puts a challenge out for those who want to participate to join in on the challenge. I am actually thinking about doing it next year in January, which is a week away. And it just helps to use what you have to make sure everything is getting rotated. The only thing I plan on buying, and this is me personally, the challenge does not include my husband, is he takes hard-boiled eggs to work every day. So I do not have chickens. That is on my radar to have chickens eventually, but I don't have chickens at the moment. So we have to buy eggs. Although I make homemade bread, he still prefers store-bought commercial bread. So those things I know I will be buying regularly in the month of January. But as for meals, we're just going to use what we have, and I'm not going to go out in the last week of December just to go stock up. We're just going, I do have an Azure order coming, but that would be typical. And during the challenge of January, I'll have another Azure order. But even though I will be picking that up, if I'm not mistaken, it will be the 3rd week of January. Even though I will be picking it up, I will not be using those items in the challenge. I'm just going to strictly rely on what I have in the house. So we just added our milk. Now we're going to knead this together. Try to get all the flour bits and the butter bits into this dough. The meatloaf is starting to smell really good. It is so yellow and buttery. Oh. If y'all not tried the Azure Standard, I hope you do. You will find that the quality of the food items that come from there is superior. I haven't had anything I do not like from Azure Standard. I love everything. I love their mission. I love what they stand by. And if you do buy from Azure, I hope you use my link down below. It does help me out just a bit, but I'm nothing special. You can actually have your own link. Anybody that you refer to the company, you also are benefit from that. But if you don't get any anything else from them, you have to get the Rumiano cheese, the Rumiano butter. It is our favorite. And every time I go visit our daughter in North Carolina, and I ask her, I says, do you need me to bring you anything? And she always says 2 things. The whole chicken I get from Azure and the butter. And it makes the best everything. Alright, so Becky says you fold it in thirds. Turn it a quarter. No, maybe I'm supposed to do it this way. And you roll it again. Try to keep it in quarters. You can just see the butter in there. I don't know if you can, but oh, it looks so beautiful. Alright, we need to fold it a third again. Like I said, I've never done it with cashew milk before. So this is an experiment. I hope it's not very costly. And then we need to fold it a third for the last time. And this gives us our flaky layers that we want the biscuits to have. We should be able to get 1 dozen biscuits from this. And she uses the round cookie cutter or biscuit cutter. I actually make mine square just so I don't have leftovers and have to re-roll it. Because, you know, efficiency is more important than aesthetics. And they're all different sizes, but that's okay. And I'm just going to put these in the refrigerator until we are ready to use these. And as you know, I do like my potatoes on the chunky side. So I'm just using a meat masher, potato masher, everything masher. A good pinch of salt. Good pinch of pepper. I'm going to grate some Parmesan cheese in here because I like cheesy potatoes. So it's still a little frozen, so it's more crumbly than shredded. Yep, I'm just going to crumble it. And make sure we break up our garlic cloves in here too, because you don't want to be biting into a big old garlic. Well, I would. You probably wouldn't. I love garlic. Some cashew milk. Let's taste it, see if it needs any more salt and pepper. perfect. There's our meatloaf. It took exactly 1 hour. And now I'm going to go ahead and put in the biscuits in the oven. It should take about 18 to 20 minutes. And our biscuits are done. You can just see the layers in that. Oh, yum. Oh. So our herb bread has doubled in size. I have a 2-pound loaf and a 1-pound loaf that I've coated with coconut oil on the inside. Just gonna take 1/3 of this dough. You can see that, but you can just see all the herbs in there. Pinching it together, tuck in the ends. It doesn't really matter because most of this is going to be cubed up and toasted to make breadcrumbs for the stuffing for tomorrow. Put the small one into the 1-pound loaf pan. Using the same piece of saran wrap to cover those. I'm just going to cover them together. We're going to let that do a second rise. So we have some mashed potatoes with some creamy gravy. We have our meatloaf and our corn on the cob, along with some delicious biscuits. So now we're going to taste it. Mashed potatoes. Remember we put some Parmesan cheese in it. The gravy is so good. We did it with half chicken stock and half milk, and I used cashew milk. And our herb meatloaf. You can look at our biscuits. They're flaky. They're soft on the inside. Tastes really good, even with the cashew milk. So that's what's for dinner tonight. Let us know what you're having tonight also. And the only thing we got to do is we have to finish our bread for the stuffing tomorrow on Christmas Day. But we're going to eat this. Then we're going to go over to one of my daughter's house and we're going to have Christmas with her and her family. So until next time, y'all have a Merry Christmas. And I will see you before New Year's. And don't forget to Jessica from 3 Rivers Homestead Pantry Challenge. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be putting videos out every other day showing what I have made for dinner, because we do eat leftovers. So I'll make meals every other day and then we'll eat the leftovers the next day. So you can see how I'm using my pantry and my freezer to have a no-spend New Year's, except for the few things that my husband will request. But other than that, we will be eating completely from our pantry and our freezer. But y'all have a happy new year, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.